Hello, so glad you can join us. Here's what's happening. A day of stress and uncertainty for the auto industry.
I'll do everything I can to protect the people and their jobs.
Sighs of relief after fearing the worst.
They can't trust anything is real anymore.
New promises of protection on the campaign trail. Plus a surge of migrants seeking asylum in Canada.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Shockwaves rumbled through Canada's auto industry following a Japanese report that Honda is considering shifting production from Canada and Mexico to the U.S. But then, Industry Minister Anita Anand said she's in contact with the automaker and no production decision affecting Canada has been discussed. Ontario's Premier Doug Ford added he's been told by Honda the report is inaccurate. Still, the sector has been on edge since Donald Trump imposed 25% tariffs on cars headed to the U.S. Let's bring in CTV's Adrian Gobriel. And Adrian, where do things stand now then?
Sandy, today Honda joined government officials by pouring cold water on the report out of Japan. Though for auto workers, this just adds to the uncertainty for an entire industry that has been teetering since Trump's auto tariffs were announced.
Since 1986, Honda has maintained manufacturing operations in Canada.
The number one selling car in Canada is a Honda. It has been for about 40 years.
Which made this news report out of Japan today even more shocking for the more than 4,200 workers who assemble the Honda CR-V and Civic in Alliston, Ontario. In a statement to CTV News, Honda says our Canadian manufacturing facility will operate at full capacity for the foreseeable future, and no changes are being considered at this time. We constantly study options for future contingency planning and utilize short-term production shift strategies when required to mitigate negative impacts on our business. So no changes right now, but potentially in the future.
We may see some CR-V production move to the U.S. to serve a U.S. customer. But there is also a lot of CR-V and Civic excess demand in Canada. If you see some CR-V move, you'll likely see some Civic move back in.
The news comes with Ontario's auto industry in flux. Stellantis in Windsor paused operations due to Trump's tariffs. GM has laid off hundreds in Ingersoll, Ontario. While the company claims that move isn't tariff-related, the impact to the surrounding communities is significant. Small business owners in Alliston are now bracing for the unknown.
If we lose over 4,000 jobs, where are our customers coming from?
These are the types of jobs that feed families, pay the mortgage, put kids through school.
Honda says it's never laid off a single worker from its Alliston plant, where in April of last year, the auto giant announced a historic $15 billion investment to build a comprehensive EV battery plant, which is currently underway.
Automotive industry leaders who've been canvassing U.S. officials on behalf of Canadian auto workers say we're months, if not at least a year away from knowing where the dust will settle on Trump's auto tariff war. Sandy.
All right, Adrian, thank you. Now, of course, there was immediate reaction on the campaign trail when this story broke, including a Liberal promise to spare automakers from some tariffs. CTV senior political correspondent Mike LeCouture now with what was said about what could have been an economic sideswipe.
Sandy, Mark Carney wanted to talk about his plan to retrain workers in the face of U.S. tariffs, but it was the economic domino effect that took center stage instead.
It's a war.
A simple description for the otherwise complicated trade dispute. With Honda's decision unclear in the morning, the Liberal leader laid out how Canadian incentives should help automakers keep production on this side of the border.
They will get 100% remission on our counter tariffs. So in other words, our counter tariffs won't apply if they continue to produce, continue to employ, continue to invest in Canada. If they don't, they will get 25% tariffs on what they are importing into Canada. Okay, so the incentives are there.
Having spoken to the president of Honda, Ontario Premier Doug Ford downplayed reports of the automaker moving production.
Well, we're going to keep Honda here. and I'll do everything I can to protect the people and their jobs.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's
Pierre
great to be here.
Poilievre condemned U.S. President Donald Trump for imposing tariffs on Canada's auto sector, which could see companies consider moving production south. The Conservative leader was firm on what he would do in response.
We should not lift the counter tariffs.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh expressed concern for the auto workers who were caught in the middle, and he wants to see safeguards put in place to keep those jobs in this country.
If you're going to sell a car in Canada, you have to have a footprint in Canada, meaning you have to make cars here or you have to have jobs here.
On a day when leaders were supposed to be preparing to debate topics like the cost of living and climate change, it was the trade war and its impacts that overshadowed everything else again. Sandy?
Michael Couture. Now, Pierre Poilievre was also promising to crack down on scams targeting seniors. The Conservative leader saying as Prime Minister he would force banks and the big telecom companies to help him do it. CTV's Rachel Aiello is with the Conservatives. And Rachel, how does Pierre Poilievre plan to follow through on this?
Sandy, seniors in this country are 33% more likely to lose money in a scam compared to other age groups. And today, the Conservative leader promised new laws to protect them.
One call, one click, and it's gone.
Backed by a row of seniors, today, Pierre Poilievre pledged his government would make it tougher for scammers to take their money. Taking aim at lacking enforcement of anti-fraud laws, the Conservatives want to require banks and telecom providers to, in real time, detect, report, and block suspected fraud, such as phishing texts and robocalls targeting customers over the age of 65.
Our seniors deserve to feel safe and secure when they pick up their phones, iPads, or computers.
The Conservatives would also put a 24-hour delay on high-risk transactions from seniors' accounts, forcing banks to call to ensure they're not being swindled.
Hello?
Failing to implement scam prevention measures could result in heavy penalties. Poilievre is also promising to create a new criminal offense, targeting executives for willful blind profiteering from senior scams, while also imposing tougher sentences and fines for fraudsters. In recent years, thousands of Canadian seniors have reported being scammed, losing millions.
The scammer was so convincing.
All of a sudden, I realized I was broke.
I could have been doing so much with my money, but it's gone.
The Liberals and New Democrats have also made senior-centric commitments during this campaign, but not specifically on scam prevention. The Conservatives targeting this demographic today comes as Nanos numbers show Canadians ages 55 and older far prefer Mark Carney to Poilievre. Sandy?
Rachel Aiello. The NDP leader also took aim at his political rivals today for scrapping plans to increase the capital gains tax, which the Trudeau government introduced and Mark Carney reversed. CTV's Abigail Beeman is here now to share how Jagmeet Singh is framing the issue. Abigail.
Sandy, it was the Trudeau Liberals that first introduced the capital gains tax changes in the last budget. So unpopular, Chrystia Freeland, who introduced it as finance minister, committed to dropping it in her bid for Liberal leadership. And Liberal leader Mark Carney scrapped it too. Capital gains are money you make when you sell an investment, stocks, business assets, investment properties. The Trudeau policy increased the portion of capital gains you pay tax on from 50 to 67% for the amount earned over $250,000. There was criticism it would stave off investments in Canada at a time when the country should be doubling down on growth in the face of threats from the United States, and criticism that it may actually target the middle class rather than the ultra-rich. In this campaign, both the Liberal and Conservative leaders vowed to be done with the policy. Singh wants to bring it back, saying it will mean $19 billion over 5 years that the government could use for things like hospital improvements, like the one he was standing in front of in Montreal to make his announcement. CTV News asked Singh why he's pushing for something that had been so unpopular.
The entire Liberal Party was in favor of it, was defending it, said it was a great thing to do, and then all of a sudden flip-flopped on it. So I think that they did the wrong thing. We've seen that the only way you actually guarantee investment in the country is by having strings attached. Giving blank checks to companies does not actually create investment.
Like all party leaders, Singh will now be focused on debate prep, with the French debate taking place here tomorrow night. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Montreal.
Okay, Abigail, thanks. Now, the time of that French debate where leaders face off in Montreal has been changed because of an actual face-off involving the Montreal Canadiens. That debate now takes place at 6 p.m. Eastern instead of 8 p.m. The NDP and Bloc had asked for a change because of a pivotal hockey game that could see the Habs clinch a spot in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Well, gamesmanship will be front and center tomorrow when a Japanese trade delegation arrives in Washington. At the same time, Donald Trump is hinting at a potential auto tariff pause. But in Washington today, talk focused on the Maryland father mistakenly deported to El Salvador. But what also got our attention was the answer to a question about Canada. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon joins us. Okay, Joy, let's start with what the White House press secretary had to say when she was asked about Donald Trump's position on Canada.
You know, Sandy, the president has said a lot about Canada, especially as this nasty trade war plays out. A few weeks ago, though, it seemed that Donald Trump was showing us some respect, even referring to Mark Carney as prime minister. No derogatory remarks. But as the press secretary confirmed today, Trump still dreams of annexing Canada. Here's the press secretary.
The president still maintains his position on Canada. The United States has been subsidizing Canada's national defense, and he believes that Canadians would benefit greatly from becoming the 51st state of the United States of America. As for autos and auto parts, I don't have anything to read out for you there, but I think the point the president was making is flexibility, and he has flexibility when it comes to negotiations and talks.
So flexibility, Joy, let's pick up on that, because talk to us about the case of the man mistakenly sent to a prison in El Salvador. Is the White House flexible or still defiant about sending him away?
Very much defiant. The White House is in a standoff with the courts right now, and this is testing the limits of Donald Trump's presidential power. There's this gentleman, Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He is at the center of this fight. Now, the Trump administration admitted that they deported the Maryland father to an El Salvador prison by mistake. Now, Garcia has not been convicted of a crime there or here, and the Supreme Court ordered the White House to facilitate his return. They have not done so, and yesterday, the Salvadorian president said he doesn't have the power to return him either. Now, a court hearing today, a district court judge actually scolded the Justice Department lawyers for doing, quote, nothing to bring Garcia back. And it's also weighing contempt charges against the Trump administration. But the White House, they see it differently. Take a listen.
Abrego Garcia was a foreign terrorist. He is an MS-13 gang member. He was engaged in human trafficking. He illegally came into our country. And so deporting him back to El Salvador was always going to be the end result. There is never going to be a world in which this is an individual who's going to live a peaceful life in Maryland.
Sandy, the Trump administration is digging into its hardline deportation policy. Sandy?
Okay, Joy. Now, the ramping up of those deportation efforts by the Trump administration has led to a surge in asylum seekers at the Canada-U.S. border. Over the past 2 weeks, claimants, most of them of Haitian origin, have been making their way north, particularly to Quebec. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin is at the Saint-Bernard-de-l'École border point. And Jen, you have some new numbers to share with us?
Yes, and a change of policy by U.S. President Donald Trump is pushing more and more migrants to try and seek refuge here on Canadian soil. There are some visible signs of that jump in the number of asylum seekers here. The Canadian Border Services Agency has brought in additional personnel. Now, the surge is actually quite recent. Here's the latest data that we've obtained. This year, the number of claimants across the country has actually been down significantly, 53% less compared to 2024. But since April 1st, 1,411 people have claimed asylum at the Saint-Bernard-de-l'École land crossing. Now compare that to the same period last year, the number was 319. This has several organizations and community groups scrambling to find resources to help with basic needs like food and housing. Colette Casavant of the Family Support Center, Maman et Papa, says resources are already stretched thin. Most of the people seeking refuge here are from Haiti and had been living in the U.S. under special programs that suspended deportations. But the U.S. president ended the programs, and a letter went out to Haitians without status asking them to leave the country by April 24th. The number of asylum seekers had gone down significantly since 2023, since the third Safe Country Agreement was extended to the entire border. Now, that agreement forces asylum seekers to make their claim in the U.S. if they enter that country first. And so many of those who actually show up here are turned around and sent back to the United States. But there are exceptions, including for those who have close family in Canada. Sandy.
Genevieve, thank you. Coming up after the break, relief from financial pressure. CTV's chief financial correspondent will be here to share the good news. Well, inflation in Canada surprisingly eased last month, helped by lower gas prices and a drop in travel to the U.S. The inflation rate was at 2.3% in March, down from 2.6% in February. Now, the data comes a day before the Bank of Canada makes its next interest rate decision. Joining us now, CTV's chief financial correspondent, Amanda Lang. And Amanda, slowing inflation is a good thing, right?
Always nice to see prices not gaining as quickly. A bit of a Trump effect here with both travel and gas prices seeing the results of the turmoil. And we should note that the Trump tariffs, such as they are, haven't shown up in prices yet, Sandy. So that is still ahead of us.
Okay. What is also ahead of us is the Bank of Canada decision tomorrow. All eyes on what it will do. So what's the expectation? Rates going down?
Well, the betting has been actually that the bank holds steady, does nothing because of the uncertainty about what happens with tariffs and pricing. Will it cause inflation in this country? However, today you saw the odds shift a little bit in favor of a cut. So if that's what people are really hoping for, there's a slight tilt in that favor, partly because lack of inflation does give the bank a little bit more wiggle room to cut rates. And of course, that will be the rate that will set a lot of costs for a lot of people.
All right, Amanda, thank you. Well, some love for Canada coming your way. California Governor Gavin Newsom is extending an olive branch, or in this case, a redwood branch, to Canadians.
Because here in California, we've got plenty of sunshine and a whole lot of love for our neighbors up north.
Newsom launched the campaign hoping to encourage Canadians to visit the state. The governor's team says the message is in response to the recent drop in tourism to California as a result of Donald Trump's policies. Newsom says 2 million Canadians visited last year. And signs of friendship are popping up in Vancouver. An American who wants to remain anonymous is trying to send us a very sincere message.
I thought how delightful that somebody is actually going to put their money where their mouth is and say how appalling all this is.
The unnamed American has bought advertising space to apologize. The billboards show the maple leaf with the words, "Dear Canada, we are so very, very, very sorry. Signed, your American friends." The U.S. citizen who bought the advertising space told CTV News they wish to remain anonymous, so the message isn't about one single person saying sorry.
Coming up on CTV National News, I'm Allison Bamford in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. What struggling businesses want from a new government.
Our customers feel it, we feel it.
And why those in Saskatchewan fear their vote won't make a difference.
There are feelings of Western alienation in this part of the province.
That story coming up.
Police are on the hunt for a suspect after multiple people were injured in an apparent hit and run in downtown Toronto this afternoon. A car crashed into 4 people in a pedestrian-only route at a local university. 2 were rushed to hospital, 1 with serious injuries. 2 others were treated on the scene. Officers are now looking for a dark green sedan with a cracked windshield, which was seen fleeing the area. A standoff is brewing between Harvard University and the Trump administration.
The president made it clear to Harvard, follow federal law, no longer break Title VI, which was passed by Congress to ensure no student can be discriminated against on the basis of race, and you will receive federal funding.
The Ivy League school is the first major university to reject White House demands. They include sweeping changes to admissions like student screening for anti-Semitism and terrorism, and making changes to existing diversity hiring practices. The Trump administration announced it is freezing more than $2 billion in grants. Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein was back in a Manhattan courtroom today. Jury selection was underway for Weinstein's retrial on sex crime charges. The New York Court of Appeals overturned his 2020 rape convictions, ruling that accusers who were not part of the charges should not have been allowed to testify. Weinstein was found guilty of rape and sexual assault in 2022 in California and sentenced to 16 years. And visitors to the famed Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris marked 6 years since a devastating fire that led to a remarkable restoration.
It's very emotional, and it's wonderful that they were able to restore it.
The massive inferno destroyed the famous roof and iconic spire. Now the restored cathedral welcomes an average of 30,000 visitors a day. CTV National News continues in a moment. Don't go away. Swift Current, Saskatchewan is a small city with a big city feel, a community that can boast a thriving local business sector. But even the most successful are struggling these days. We sent CTV's Alison Bamford to a hot spot in Swift Current to hear the concerns during this election campaign.
A warm, windy spring day in Swift Current signals the end of the winter bowling season. It's the last day of play for the Club 55 League. On the lanes, they don't usually talk politics.
We're just here to have a good time.
John Friesen turns 100 in September. He's the one to beat. He's thrown 5 strikes in a row. Much like his bowling game, he says he can't complain about the federal government.
We've always had a good government here. They give good pensions.
But for his competition, Jackie Coward, there are concerns. Affordability and the rising cost of living top her list.
I really watch what I have to buy. It's just gone crazy.
Prices are up everywhere, including the Social Bowl.
It'll be $9.20 with taxes.
Owner Tegan Gator says small businesses like hers are just trying to keep up with inflation, taxes, and now tariffs.
Our customers feel it, we feel it. It makes it hard to make any money.
Some people told me they don't vote. Living in a conservative stronghold, they say they can already predict the outcome. Others say they don't feel their vote matters in a first-past-the-post system.
The election is over when it passes Ontario. We don't have anything to say about the election, really.
There are feelings of Western alienation in this part of the province.
A helpless feeling for voters, but Swift Current Council is hopeful whoever forms government will continue funding municipal projects.
The big issue right now is recreational facilities, and we have an aging aquatic facility that has been good to our community, but it's old.
Back at the bowling alley, they're focused on their game, and just like the federal election, they won't dwell on the results. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Swift Current.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo, your local CTV News is coming up. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Bye for now.